Turn to Psalm 139. Psalm 139. I'm going to open with a reading there, beginning at verse 1. David writes, O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thoughts afar off. For you scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all. You have enclosed me behind and before. You laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn and dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will overwhelm me, and the light around me will become night, even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light are alike to you. For you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. For your eyes have made me see, your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God, how vast is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would outnumber the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Might put a ribbon there. Don't know if we'll come back to that very often or not. I'm going to start with just helping you remember some times long ago when you were a kid, and I'm talking about quite a young child, let's say 10 years old. And you'd be out and about somewhere, and as long as you could see that Mama was in vision and she had an eye on you, or maybe it was Daddy, you felt comfortable. You might have bbeen in the park playing, you might have been out shopping, but as long as Mama was watching, it was going to be all right. Or it may have been the school ground, and you're out on the school ground and you're 50 yards from the teacher, but you look up and you see the teacher's in her place. She's watching. She's got an eye over everything, and you know it's going to be okay. And those were good days because there was a simple trust there that if there was an adult around, somehow or another it was all going to work out. It was all going to be okay. And then we outgrew it. And then we started feeling kind of isolated and unseen and wondered if anybody cared and if anybody knew and those kind of things. But when we're seen, such as we just read, it tells us we're not alone. God is watching. He knows all about us. I like the way the psalmist says it. He knows when you rise up, when you sit down, and behold, before you even say the word, He already knows what's on your tongue. I think that's pretty amazing. So God does see, He does care. If I can do it this way, He is the adult in the room. And can we say amen to that? We need an adult in the room. I'm talking about our community, our society at large. So God's eyes are towards us. If you want to flip back and look at Psalms 34:15, that's just actually what He tells us there. So He sees what people miss because we tend to look at the outer appearance. I'm not going to say that's totally wrong and evil of us. We have 5 basic senses, right? And our primary sense, most of us would agree, would be our sight. And so we see somebody. And from what we see, we divvy things up in our head and make whatever connections we make. But there in Psalm 16:7, that's when Samuel looked at the older brother of David and thought, well, there's the king. And God said, don't look at his outward appearance. God looks on the heart. And so what I'm saying is God sees what is in your heart, that part that other people miss, that part that other people cannot see. And if you'll pause there for just a quick aside, aren't you glad they can't see that? How many times would you have been embarrassed if somebody could have read your heart? You know, if you know how to keep these closed, you can have some non-flattering things in your heart and you can get by with it. But if they could read your heart, it'd be like that Gilligan's Island episode. I know I'm going way back on that one. Well, that was the one where they ate the sunflower seeds and they could read each other's thoughts. Some of you are smiling. You remember it. The rest of you are going to have to YouTube it this afternoon. God sees the unseen parts. He sees the secret things. He knows what we do in secret. And He encourages us to do what we do in secret. He will reward us openly. So He knows what's going on. He's going to act at the right time. Now, we're going to have to work on that statement a little bit because God's timetable and my timetable are not always the same thing. But what this all gives, if you can really get that Psalm 139, 1 through 18, and you can really rest in it, it gives you a solid foundation. Then you can kind of flip over to Job 14:13 or 15:14, I forget, where he says, even though he slay me, yet will I trust him. You can find that rest that Job had when you understand. So our question is, will we live like God sees us? Are we going to do it like, I know God's watching, I know He's got this, it's all going to be okay? Not from an earthly perspective, but from heaven's perspective. And I maintain that when we get to heaven, a whole lot of us are going to back off and go, boy, I'm glad I didn't get my way. I would have messed it all up if it had gone the way I wanted it to go. God didn't know what He was doing. So God is personal. He knows you. Of course, you know the verse about He knows the number of hairs on your head, but He notices you, not just the crowd. Now, we're a small group, so most of us ought to be able to look around the audience a little bit and go, okay, I know everybody in here. And I see individuals. Now, on rare occasion, I'll speak to a crowd that is just a crowd because I don't know the individuals. And as a human, that's the only option you have. But God isn't limited to the limitations that we have. And whether we're one in a group of about 40 or we're one in a group of 40,000, God knows every name and every person, every heart, every situation, and every secret thing and everything that's public. He just knows it all. We're that personally, individually seen. So let's use Hagar as a brief example. This is after she conceived, and Sarah was a little aggravated about it, and she's complaining to Abraham, and Abraham says, well, she's your maidservant, do what you want. Now, that's a little spooky right there, because things get really, really, really bad, because Hagar's got nobody on her side. Hagar, in that culture, in that time, in her position, she was basically property. Now, I know that's tough for us to get our heads around, but she was basically property, and Sarah could do what she wanted, how she wanted, and there was nobody going to say anything about it, because that was the culture of the day. And so in this first incident here in Genesis 16, she runs away. And then the angel comes and speaks to her, and she finds out that God's watching her. One of the more insignificant people of her culture, God's watching her. And God's watching us also. He looks at the overlooked. He sees the exhausted. He sees all the stuff they do. He sees their routine, as we saw there in Psalm 139. In the first of those, He sees their rising up and their setting down. He knows it all. All those secret insecurities and secret thoughts, He knows. Nobody else may know, but He knows. And that ought to be a place of comfort for us. So He's watching us with care, not suspicion. And that suspicion is a little hard to get around sometimes, because how many of us preachers have pounded the pulpit, and we say some pretty harsh things sometimes, and there are some harsh verses in the Bible. And then we have this modern mentality where we have cameras everywhere and your cell phone's with you everywhere, and we know where you were, when you were, at least we know where your phone was. And when something happens, everybody's looking at cameras, and it's almost this big brother concept that if God's watching me all the time, oh no, He's just waiting for me to goof up. Kind of like some of these workplaces that have cameras all over the place, and you got some management sitting back there making sure Dave's really doing his job, and make sure Jeff's really doing his job. And as long as they're doing their job, they don't hear anything, but then they get the call and says, oh, we need to talk, That's no fun, is it? That kind of idea of always watching me, just waiting to make a mistake so we can hop all over that person. No, we don't like that. But when God watches us, it's not with that kind of suspicion. God's watching us for our care. Be a little bit more like a loving parent watching a child. And they're keeping an eye on that child, so in case that child gets into danger, they can pull the child out of danger. But they like to watch their child learn and explore and develop and all those things. So God never loses us in the crowd. He always knows who we are. And He will always know who you are. And He'll know your place in your current community. If we lived way back in the days of Hagar and we were in that kind of culture, He would know where we fit into that culture. And He knows where we fit in now. And nowadays, while it's not like Hagar's culture, I would say there are probably the majority of us who are just overlooked, dismissed by society because we're not billionaires or we're not multimillionaires or we're not influencers or we're not top dog entertainers or what have you. We're just regular old people. What can they do for me? And we get kicked to the curb. God knows. And God still sent His Son to die for our sins. So His watching gives us some dignity. We're just regular, ordinary people. And I don't mean this to sound too cold, but when you and I die, life is going to go on. There'll be 3 or 4 people maybe whose lives are disrupted by our departure, and the rest of the world is just going to sit around and go, well, that was a good funeral. Where you want to go get some tacos, or you want to go get, and they're going to go on with life just that quick. They really are. And then they'll sit around and tell stories sometimes. You go, oh, remember that preacher we had that time? Yeah, what was his name? Cliff? Somebody called me Cliff the other day, and I thought, well, that'll work. Serve food. I wasn't going to argue with them, right? And so that's where we're at with people. But with God, we have one who's personal. And we find dignity in that. Now, God sees us before He acts. And I think that's really important. He knows where we're at. He knows what's going on. And He's not going to act on accident and take a step and go, oh, I didn't understand your situation. I'm so sorry. I really messed your life up there. And then have to back off of that. He's not going to rush into it too quick. And that's where we get impatient. Because the moment I get a toothache, for example, I want God to take care of it right then. Right now, I don't even want to have to go to the dentist. I like my dentist, but I'd rather be able to pray a 2-second prayer and boom, the toothache's gone. God don't do that, does He? God works differently. And He doesn't rush into things because He knows where He had James write, James chapter 1, verse 2 and 3, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, and let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking. He knows all of that. And He knows that we need to go through some of the struggles. And it's a little bit funny to me because as an adult, I'm going to argue against that logic. But when I put my children into school, all the way back in 19, whatever that was, and they came home and going, this is hard. I said, no, it's hard. But this is how you learn. And when the grandkids came along and they hit, those academic subjects and said, this is hard. And they're struggling with this or that, we're going, no, it's hard. This is how we learn. This is how we grow. And now if I do that analogy, everybody goes, well, of course, I get that. Well, God's a father and He's growing children too. I just forget that even though I'm 68, I'm still His child. And He's not going to rush me and push me too fast, because you push a kid too fast, you're going to get him over their head, right? And so you try to keep your timing right. The good thing is God's watching us and He knows the timing. And He knows when to step in. So He saw Israel's affliction, Exodus 3:7, when He's talking to Moses at the burning bush. And He says, I've seen their affliction. And He knows now is the time to act. Now, 100 years earlier wasn't the time to act yet. 100 years before that wasn't the time to act yet. Now, I don't understand all of that. I can read Genesis 15:16, get a little bit of insight there, but I don't know all God was thinking. But God was looking at the culture of Israel, and at Moses' time, He goes, okay, it's time to act. And He did it at the right time for His purposes. Now, had I been a slave 200 years before that, I would have thought, oh no, now is the time to act. And God would have said, no, not now. You got a couple of more 100 years before I move on this one. God saw Leah. Remember, she was unloved. He saw that Rachel was loved and Leah was unloved, and He opened her womb. Not a big major thing. I got a nation He's looking at. That's an important thing. I've got a woman who, if her name had not been recorded in the Bible, no one would have ever known who she was and no one would have ever cared. And there have been many, many Leahs in the history of humanity. And yet God was watching her, He was caring, and He acted. So He moves when it's His time. And what you and I have to trust is that when He's not moving as fast as I want Him to move, as in yesterday, His silence is not lack of care. It is not blindness. It's not inattention. It's just that He sees the whole big picture, and He knows if I give this kid the car keys now and they're only in the second grade, they're going to end up in a ditch and dead. And they may kill other people in the process. We don't give the kid the car keys now till, is it 16? I saw a little clip that said if you were raised in the 70s, these are some of the things you did, and one of them was you started driving at 14. And if you were raised before the 70s, you might have started driving way before 14, because out on the farm, things were done different. But, God has got to wait and be sure that you and I are ready, because He doesn't want to destroy us. And so the blessings come at the right timing. Now, I will say this, you and I can have a little hand in that we discipline ourselves and bring our bodies into subjection. We study to show ourselves approved, rightly dividing the Word of God. We can put ourselves in the right place a little quicker by simple discipline and training and determination. Or we can be kind of lazy and nonchalant and slow about it and whine because God hasn't answered me yet. And then we have to face the truth. Well, then maybe it's because I'm not ready yet. So waiting doesn't mean that He forgot us. Waiting may just mean time's not right. Waiting may be the very thing I want is the very thing He knows will destroy me. I had the friend once that said, I never made a whole lot of money. God must have understood I couldn't have handled it. He did all right in life. He lived comfortable. But he never made the multi-millions that a lot of us guys would dream about at stages in life. And just think, what would it do to folks? We'll do a quick aside on that one. So you got an up-and-coming singer, and they want to sing, they want to stand on the stage in front of thousands of people, and they think, oh, this is going to be the fulfillment of all my life's dreams. And in some ways it is. And then you read their story a year later, 2 years later, and they're depressed, they're alcoholic, they're in rehab, or they've committed suicide. I believe it was Ed Dye, the first one I heard say it, be careful what you pray for. You just might get it. God knows what He's doing because He knows us so intimately, in detail that we don't even know ourselves. So He's going to act at the right time in the right way. That's reassuring. So we can trust God hadn't looked away. We can trust it's all okay. He knows what He's doing. God's knowledge anchors His promises, of course. God knows what He promised us, and He remembers, and it's all again at the proper timing. In Genesis 8:1, it says God remembered Noah. And in the English language, we're like, oh, was he off in another galaxy? And they paused for a minute and went, oh, I forgot about Noah. And Genesis 1:8 is He remember. No, it's not that kind of remembering. It's just it came the time to start bringing around the next change of plans. God remembered His covenant with Abraham. This is Genesis 2:24. Of course, Israel's been in slavery for 400 years. It wasn't that God forgot, literally went blank. It's just He knows what He's doing. And He spans all time. So our circumstances, whatever they may be, don't cancel God's word out. God still knows what He's doing. The promise is still yet coming. And we have one of those future yet promises also. How many of you are in heaven? I heard Butch say, we were talking before that class, and Butch, this is the first time I've heard that one, incidentally. Life's tough in the bluff. I like my Pine Bluff, grown to love it, but life is tough in the bluff, depending on where you hang out and who you hang out with especially, right? We're not in heaven yet. Well, why aren't we in heaven yet? Because it's not time yet. We still have some growing and things to do here. But the fact that we're not in heaven doesn't mean that God's promises of heaven have been canceled out. Well, I'm not there. God must be a liar. No, that's not how it works. It's kind of like you tell the kid they start ninth grade, and I'm not telling the kids this, but I'm just using an example. If you graduate with all A's, we're going to buy you a new car. Now they got to get through all those school years and get all the A's to get the new car, right? And they can't get 10th grade go, well, I don't have a new car. My parents are liars. No, the circumstances there don't change the promise. So you have to understand how the promises work and where they fall in God's timetable. But they're definitely not fragile. I want to read that Numbers 23:19. Numbers 23:19. Let me get to 23 and it'll work on it. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken and he will not make it good? You can trust God. His promises aren't all that iffy and shaky. They last over a long, long span. So that means we've got something we can build on. We talk about digging deep and building on the rock like the wise man who built his house on the rock. That's what we do. This is what all this Bible study is always about. And there's always a refining and a learning element to it as we go through the various stages of life. And all of these promises are there. I think of Philippians 4, 6, and 7, the peace that passes understanding. It's there because God's promises are trustworthy. And he does see the whole road ahead, which takes us to our next point. He sees the path ahead. He knows where all this is going. I know where I want it to go. And I think you know where you want your life to go too. And you know how you want it to pan out. But I don't know where it's going. And you don't know where it's going either. Life turns on a dime. One second you're going one direction, and the next second you're going another, and it blindsides you sometimes. So what we do is we trust that God can see around the bend. He can see the things that we can't see. He knows the things, and as Isaiah 46:10 said, he declares the end from the beginning, and that should be comforting. Which guide do you want? Do you want a guide that's been down the path 14 times and he's taken a lot of people down the tour and knows exactly where he's going? Or you want the guide who gets on the bus, he gets behind the wheel, picks up the microphone and goes, guys, this is my first day. I've never done this before. I don't know where we're going. But we're going to have a good time. Maybe. I don't know. I want that kind of a guide. For my life anyway. I want a God who knows what's going on. So we can walk forward with confidence, and we can do it all with confidence because God knows exactly what he's doing. And he's done it for how many, well, that isn't even the right question. I was going to say how many thousands of years, but God's eternal. So God has done this forever, and he sees the whole picture. In Matthew 6:33, that's where he says we seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. But right before it, he's been talking about seeking God and not worrying about material things. And he says, God knows you need all these things. He knows you need food, shelter, and clothing. Don't worry about it. Seek God because he sees the whole picture and he sees the future before we reach it. And I think that's kind of neat. I think that's kind of exciting. Now, again, quick aside. I moved here many years ago now. When I moved here, I thought, well, I'll stay here 3 years. I think that'll be plenty. And that means I would have moved a long time ago. And had I got to go the direction I want, I don't have a clue where I'd went. But for some reason or another, it worked out and I'm still here. But learning to trust that God knows what he's doing and he's in charge and not fighting against it has turned the experience of Pine Bluff and the brethren here and the other folks that you meet into a really enriching. Now, I know this sounds a little odd because some people go, Pine Bluff enriching? No, to an enriching, enjoyable experience that I'll look back on and can say, I wouldn't change much. Now, you're always going to look back and, well, I'd change this and that and that. There's some little details you would change, of course. I'd get rid of the kidney stones. How about you, Fur? I'd mark those out really quick, right? There's some things you would change, but you look at the overall picture, you go, no, I don't think I could have painted a better picture, really. I think I like the way this has turned out. And God knew it all before it even started. That's the fun thing. We can really get on board with God and go, yeah, God did it right. After we're looking back, it's a little harder to get on board with God when you don't have all that history and look forward and go, I know God's got this. He's going to do it right. So that's where faith comes in, isn't it? And that's how we know He knows where I need to be and what I need to be and all the things I need. He's the trainer. So in faith, we just listen for that direction. We keep our ear open, so to speak. And of course, that main source is book, chapter, and verse. We keep going back to the scriptures and then we follow God. Because who better to follow? So somebody said about AI, so it won't be much longer. AI will be the smartest person in the room. Now, when AI is the smartest person in the room with secular intelligence, are you going to trust Chuck or Jimmy Bob to make your life decisions when you got AI there with an IQ of 200? I don't know about you, but unless we're talking about pizzas over taco, I'm looking for AI to give me some IQ 200 answers versus Jimmy Bob, who's got an IQ of 202. Well, that's a good IQ right there, an IQ of about 102. Or you get the idea. So it's the same concept. I've got God who knows the future. He's all-knowing. He's omniscient. He's all-intelligent. He's got it all. And then I got me with my little 3 pixels of information over here. Now, the paradox of man is I am going to insist that my 3 pixels of information are better than God's omniscience because that's pride and arrogance and stupidity, but that's just the way. No, I don't want to do that. I want to follow God because I know God knows. And that's where faith steps in. And then it's going to give us a little bit of courage because if we know God's seeing us and we know God's got this, then we can do more brave things. I hope not like Stephen exactly, but he found his courage in God. God's attention is a promise. 2 Chronicles 16:9. I'm running out of time, so I won't go to it, but it says, the eyes of the Lord run to and fro over the whole earth, seeking somebody whose heart is wholly devoted to Him, that He may show Himself strong on their behalf. And so He's going to be looking, and He's going to see all the little quiet obedience and the patience and just that slow, steady pace that went through the mundane redundancies of life and didn't lose heart. He's watching. He sees all of that. And then He's going to listen when we cry. That's Psalms 34:15 as we referenced earlier. And He's not going to overlook us. Not a single one of us. And so we don't have to hide from God like though He's a bully or going to mess with us in a bad way. We can rest because we know He sees us. And that's enough. That He sees us. And He's waiting for His children to come home eventually. So His eyes are on us and His hands are ready. So let's summarize it. God sees me. That's not a small comfort if you really understand what's going on in the depth of it all. He sees our consistency. And your consistency doesn't have to be anything that's going to make headlines. It's not. But He sees your consistent prayer. He sees your consistent attendance. He sees your consistent daily Bible reading. He sees your consistent kindness to people in the community, kindness to people in your family, your goodness, your gentleness, your long-suffering that's just day after day after day after day in the workplace sometimes. He sees all of that. No one else may appreciate it, but God certainly does. So He sees us waiting with our unanswered questions. That's just what we do. We wonder, when, God? When are you going to fix this? When are you going to take care of it? And He says, take comfort. I got it. I know what I'm doing. And so we wait, and it's not wasted time. And He sees us, and He guides us through His Word. And we just learn to be happy because we're not unseen and we're not forgotten. Now, sometimes I know we get to feeling forgotten, but we're not by God. And if you can make God the center, then you have a constant sense of attention and validation. So His seeing us should quieten our fears a bit and anchor our hearts. And we can go, that's enough. Because if you're going to anchor it on people outside, that's fun some, but it doesn't last. God sees what people miss. He keeps what he promised, and it gives us courage to keep walking forward. Are you resting in the fact that God sees you? And I mean you, very personally you. I hope this doesn't sound too trivial, but when you got up this morning and brushed your teeth, God knew you were brushing your teeth. When you combed your hair, or what little of it some of us have left, he said, oh, look, he's trying to get his hair laid down. Isn't that cute? He saw you. When you were trying to pick out which socks to wear, which shoes to put on, he saw you. It's not just the big things. He sees you. And when somebody you're dealing with acts the fool and they're snippet or impolite or they're crude to you or what have you, and you turn the other cheek, so to speak, he sees that. And even though it was just a snippy cashier at McDonald's who ought to have took the day off instead of coming to work, and you chose to be polite instead of saying, I want to see the manager. He saw that. Every little thing. And if you can learn to understand that and rest in that, you're in a really, really wonderful place. So I guess I'll close right there and go, are you resting in that? If you are, stay the course. If not, and we can help in any way, let us do so. While together we stand and sing.